logistic regression model. Why is that?
And in working through that, I found that there were some answers that survey respondents didn't even check for the most part. I mean, there were some that I had on there in taking that from the model and then also adding in those responses. There were, I would get surveys back and students just wouldn't answer or check those at all. And so I didn't really think to include those as well.
Okay. So like the question, help develop leadership skills.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a positive side of, because most of the perception included in your logistic regression are negative perceptions, right? Hazing, substance abuse, or community outreach is the good one. Lack of values, lack of diversity. I would think that leadership development would be a good one.
Okay.
But so, like you said, because of the data problem, and that's the reason you didn't include those in your analysis, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Did we address that? Did you address that in the narrative?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
We will, but
Yeah, so
But you
we
will.
want to talk about
Yes,
that.
I would.
I have another question. I have two comments.
Okay.
You include a lot of tables in your chapter 4 that is not related to your research questions. They are interesting, but they take a lot of space and not really related to your research questions. Now, if you want to get this published, then you can put all those information there that has nothing to do with your research questions. So that's just one comment. The other, I think, what you wrote in your implication, in your discussion, and also what you present here today, your implication for practice is too general. You didn't talk about your result, actually. If you go back to your implication for, no, go back. Okay, go back to your result. Okay, just show this one. So this one showing that these are the potential reasons why people don't want to join sorority fraternities.
Mm-hmm.
And when you talk about implication, you should specifically address each one and say, as a fraternity sorority advisor or educators, what can we do to address these problems in order to increase participation in sorority fraternities, instead of go to your implication. Okay, instead of saying, well, that really have nothing to do with your study. This is a general comments that, yeah, my study can assist student affairs professionals, blah, blah, blah. But, well, tell me specific what your result tells you. For example, the lack of values. Let me ask you. So, there is a general perception among non-Greek later association members that, non-members, that Greek students do not show lack the, what you want. The lack of values are showcased by affiliate members. As a fraternity sorority advisor, educator, how would you address that?
That would actually be a conversation that I would bring up to our Greek leaders at our yearly Greek Leadership Retreat. We have a retreat for our top-notch officers every year. And so utilizing that opportunity to get them together to really let them know that this is what is being reflected upon you on the campus. You know, you may do all of your philanthropy, your community service, but you're obviously not telling your story good enough to show that you're living the values that your founders put forth for you, and that the values that caused you to join your organization. And so utilizing that 2.5-day retreat to work in basically some values 101 that I've utilized at other campuses as well would be the opportunity that I would take for my Greek leaders in order to let them know that we might need to start living our values a little bit more.
And what else would you suggest them to do? Based on your understanding of the literature, based on your knowledge about the theory, the literature, student development theory, and your experience as an advisor. Other than get them together and let them talk about it, what else would you recommend doing?
I would also
to change this perception, by the way.
I would also recommend bringing in more of the headquarters staff and the advisors, because oftentimes advisors only come in when there's a serious problem like hazing or substance abuse or sexual assault. So also looping in the advisors into that conversation with those collegiate students and giving that perspective from the advisory component, because as a member of another Greek letter organization, while yes, they respect the fact that I'm Greek and I'm their advisor on the campus, it sometimes also takes that organizational advisor to come in and let them know that this is what our organization was founded upon, these are the reasons why we exist, and this is what we need to get back to in order to showcase values to the general campus and to the administration.
Okay. That's all.
Okay. Well, I would echo Dr. Chin's last question about more specificity in your implications, and that's something I had marked several times throughout here. As you're talking about things that you would do, what are the implications for practice? I have questions through here specifically what. They could use these findings. It's exactly what he was just saying. It's okay, that's pretty general, but what out of your study is specific to this? And what specific recommendations do you have? So that's pretty much a general suggestion. I have another basic question, and it could be just the way I looked at this as I was looking at your conclusions and so forth. You seem to state, and you stated this in your presentation as well, that you're making a link between question number 6 here, which you specifically ask individuals, let me find it here. Question, thank you. Which of the following do you believe to be true about Greek lettered fraternities and sororities? And then there's a whole list of those, okay? When you talk about this, Zach, you make this link between that belief and their not joining. But I'm not seeing in here where you actually ask them, are these reasons why you're not joining? So how would you address that? What am I missing? How did you make that link between this response to their belief and the action of either joining or not joining being Greek or sorority fraternity?
I would say, honestly, being a member of a Greek letter organization and having been a Greek advisor, you're right, Dr. Bauer, I didn't ask, and that's probably something that I should have asked. But in looking at that, I really just took it as, okay, well, they have identified these particular reasons, and then it translates into why, because in having just casual conversations with students, of course, and asking at orientations or at Greek life fairs, what are some of the reasons that you don't join a Greek letter organization? And a lot of students have indicated, of course, hazing, but then some have indicated, I don't like the way they represent themselves, or I don't have the time. It just takes too much time. And so just really in a conversation, making that link, but in asking that formally, I did do that.
Okay, so what I'm suggesting is that changes the way you can talk about things. Okay, you went kind of way over the top here in using the word cause, which we don't use because this is social science research and we don't get to causes. But we need to figure out a different way for you to talk about that, because you've not, in your data, you've not said, okay, are these reasons why you're not Greek? So we need to soften that connection that you seem to make here by saying things like, these are possible reasons why individuals don't affiliate. Okay, and so I need you to go back through and sort of back off that assumption that these beliefs lead to certain actions. And then I think that will alleviate the issue that I see here.
Okay.
You know, that there's not that link. That was my major thing here. And I'll ask Dr. Chin this. I am used to seeing some sort of indication on tables when the relationship is significant. Is that something that should be, in other words?
Well, like I said, your tables have nothing to do with your research questions,
Okay.
right? So I'm not sure why you present all those tables in there, unless you want to add another research questions, because all your research questions will address in just two or one tables. Two tables. So your research question actually will address in just 2 pages, right? All the other tables were interesting tables, but not related to your research question.
Okay. So don't worry about that on the tables, because you're going to take them out anyway. But if in the ones that are remaining, which 2 are remaining? 23?
24, 25. Now, I think you can put asterisk over there. So if it's significant, less than 0.05, you put 1 asterisk. If it's less than 0.01, you put 2. And if it's less than 0.001, you put 3. Easy to do. And related to that, you didn't ask them that are those the reasons that they don't join Greek organization. And I think that's something that's important, especially if you want to get this published. You need to be careful because you imply something that you didn't really study. So you need to be careful not to imply that's the reason people not join Greek organization. I actually recommend you change your title. Okay, I have a title for you, but you don't have to use them. So my title for you is a comparison of perceptions on Greek letter organizations between members and non-members. Because that's what I see your dissertation is about. That's the comparison of perceptions between members and non-members. But you don't actually ask them if those are the reasons they choose not to join the Greek organization. Right. If you ask in the survey, what are the reasons you choose not to join Greek organization? Then, fine, you can say those are the reasons, but you didn't.
I like that title. It's a much more descriptive title.
And it's shorter.
That was my major thing. I have some smaller things here that I will share with you about different places where I was asking for evidence, how you define some things for the participants. For example, you say that they believe that Greek letter organizations suffer from a lack of diversity. You know, diversity can be a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So is there some way that you define that for them? But both of my biggest issues have been addressed. That's the lack of specificity in the recommendations and implications, and the tie between their beliefs and their behavior.
All right, I heard these are excellent comments as always from our committee, and caused me to think about and realize some things too. One is that, because I never really read it in here, but I've heard it today, and that's researcher bias. And we need a little statement in there about researcher bias, because you are so ensconced in the areas of fraternity life. And you referenced, I've just had so many casual conversations about this. That's not in your research. And that's when I saw, there's that researcher bias coming in, because you're finding things that you didn't really find. because